a reason to use that iPhone mirroring thing. I think I brought this up maybe last episode or at some point, and I was just like, I don't really know what's going on, and I think there's been some good reasons, sort of, to
Angry
use
Birds.
it. Yeah, that's good. But I was showing someone a podcast app. I was talking about podcast listening apps, and I was about to hold my phone up to the camera like I like to do. And then I was like, hold on. And then it turns out you can totally screen share the app of mirroring your phone.
Ooh.
Which is fun. And then I could demo using it. I was
So
showing
you're
people
on like a Zoom or something, or a
That's right. I was
web
on
call,
Zoom.
and you could just. That's actually good. So demos, we should add that. We're gonna put that. Number one still use is 2FA. You can just do it on the thing. And then number two will be, I think, demos of apps, live apps that you don't have to like do anything special. Love that.
Yeah. And it worked out well. Now, I mean, I guess it makes sense that you can only. It's an odd use of the word mirror. Let me lay this one on you too. You mirror it, but it has to be locked for you to mirror it. So there's actually nothing that you're mirroring. If you were mirroring it, it would be a lock screen that you would.
It's more like a remote interface.
Yeah, it's remote desktop.
It's like a remote iPhone interface, but that does seem like a mouthful. I can see where they came up with mirroring, right?
I wonder how many meetings they had about that, where they're like, hold on, we're not mirroring it.
Probably more than Microsoft with their rollout of their new Windows app for Mac OS.
Oh, is that the one that's the Windows app for Windows or something? I forget.
Something like that. I was in a working session. Everyone's using Windows Microsoft Remote Desktop. That's the name of the app. And literally one at a time, it gets killed while we're all using it. And Windows Update runs and rolls out a replacement application with a different name. So everyone's like, I can't get into my, we were all using PCs remotely, and like none of us could get into it. And we had to like go and Google that, oh, by the way, we killed, not only did we upgrade your app, we renamed it to something else that's totally different with different configuration settings while you're using it with no.
So what were you on a Mac? And then
we were all.
So did the Mac app change as well? Or
yes.
Is that, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
it was called.
Maybe for everyone, because I would assume, were you doing some online training? Because I've done this a bunch through online training, where they the first thing is like you have to get the Microsoft remote thing on your Mac working.
Yep.
That's test one. I mean, it's almost like, okay, so that app has been renamed. It's
now called the Windows app.
The Windows app on. So in Mac, and is it in Mac App Store? Where do I get this?
Microsoft Update rolled it out.
Oh my gosh. All right. So this is like before you do your next cloud training, make sure to get this.
Yes. Everyone go update your slides for training materials. It's no longer called Microsoft Remote Desktop.
I feel like this is a step. I don't know, Matt, have you had this? Like, I do feel like, I won't name any specific vendors by choice, but it feels like this is always the, well, even others, even not Microsoft. It is like literally like the first thing is like, okay, we're going to be using this Windows machine today, and you need to like set up the remote connection. And there's like the Mac instructions and the Windows instructions. This is before you actually even do anything in the cloud. This is what always makes it all infuriating. You're like, okay, let me spend 10 minutes like trying to figure out how to use this. And then they give you these special instructions on like, here's how you can cut and paste between your Mac and the actual remote desktop, and then how you can paste something into the terminal.
Yep. I'm not disagreeing.
You're like, how did we we have so much technology and so much AI, and it's like the cut and paste is very difficult when you're going between those three environments, because you'll actually be doing the exercise. You're like, I have literally been lost at some point, like lost within Windows of Windows. Like, I'm not sure what I'm cutting. I'm not sure what I'm pasting. At any minute, I feel like I could take down the entire internet.
Absolutely. And then you accidentally press like Apple W to close the window, and the whole window session is gone.
That is done that as well. Yes.
But I mean, it to be fair, it's really great for training sessions. We were using an IDE plugin. So not only did you have to have a working desktop, you had to have the IDE installed, and you had to have the plugin installed and configured. So I was like, yeah, this is the perfect use case for it, right?
I would just say God bless the people that create training, because like,
when
it works well, it's like amazing. And then you're like, like how long, sometimes like you finish a training class, you're like, if I just had to rewrite all the things I just did, it would, I mean, it'd be like weeks. Like weeks of work, right? And then of course, like you're on there and it's like, especially when you do it virtually, like there's always one person that like is just way off track. And it's I don't know, the trainer's usually just like, so patient. They're just like, hey, let's do a little breakout session. Well, I'll put you over here and we'll figure it all out.
How's it going over here?
I can see not everyone's made it all the way through. Matt, how are you doing? Do you have any questions? And then you're like,
yes. I had trained the trainer training last week, so I'm all up in that.
All right. Well, good. Well, maybe Cote, maybe the mirroring iPhones will make future trainings.
Oh yeah,
better, right? Maybe because that's really what you want. You just want to just mirror some like thing for me, and it just all work magically.
Well, no, because then you're in the training session as the proctor, and they're like, all right, pull out the authenticator app. Oh, what's it called on Samsung Android version 6.9? And you're like, heck if I know. I was like, oh, you've got a lockdown BlackBerry. I'm so sorry, right? Yeah.
You're out of luck.
Well, it sounds like y'all, I haven't used a Windows machine in a long time. I think the last time I used it, we could probably find it in the archives where I was trying to set up some gaming machine for my son to play Ark or something. And that was an amazing experience. Just trying to figure out how to do all that. But so that raises the question, like, what's been going on with Windows this whole time? How's since you've got some recent experience, they still got that start button. Like, what are they doing over there?
Well, they moved the start button to the middle of the screen at some point, into the middle of the bottom menu.
What?
Yeah, it sounds like Cote, you're missing the classic interface. So you might want to switch back to that. Let's see what else happened.
It kind of makes it look like a Mac. It's like the menu bar at the bottom, right? It's very similar concept.
Oh, okay.
Just like your Apple, your launcher at the bottom.
But I was thinking like first generation like QuickTime, where you've got that kind of like simulacrum of like some sort of like I don't know, Palm Pilot that's got a button in the middle,
right?
That you might press.
It's not that much better than that, because when you click it doesn't show you like everything you could possibly that's installed on your thing. It's like, what do you feel like searching for? And you're like, what do you mean I gotta search? It's like, well, here's the last 5 things you use. And like, but I gotta play Ark with my kid, or whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm gonna right click on this thing, and don't get me started, that replay thing, or that AI recording of all your screen stuff, it came back. They're like, we decided we're going to put it back in. So what I would recommend, if you're just gaming on a Windows machine, is switch over to Bazite Linux. That was my pick about 4 or 5 shows ago. It's still my pick. It's great. It's a gaming Linux distribution.
I do think though, one thing we can say that kind of maybe unifies the Windows and the Mac is from like a resource allocation, is like, you can tell the people in charge of like operating system settings, the settings screens and stuff, they get no budget, because the Mac settings app, like that one was rewritten kind of to look like an iPad, and like a lot of people, no, this is in the current version. A lot of people hate that, right? Because you can't like if you try to resize it, it won't resize. It kind of is like it's kind of like an iPhone app and it's like a unification no one wanted, right? And it's like, and of course there's been a lot of complaints around that. And then when you're in the Windows settings, it's like it has kind of been rewritten, but like if you just go a couple levels deep, you kind of just get back to like the old school, like what it used to look like. And you're like, it's just kind of like, it's clear no one wants to spend money on the actual settings UI. You're always just sort of like a little confused, and you just kind of, and then you get used to it and it's weird, but then eventually they want to make some change to it to make it better, but no one really makes it better. They just make arbitrary changes to it, and then you have to relearn it. So I think that's a real thing. If we could bring together the Mac team and the Windows team to just go on and off site and be like, and we can just be real honest with you, neither one of you knows what you're doing on this. Why don't you both go spend time together, trade some ideas, and we're going to send some UI designers in there with you and come out with some kind of consistent metaphor so we can all just get along. And so we all don't have to be confused about settings. So that's really what I would like to see going forward.
All right. Well, that's a good proposal. Maybe I think maybe Apple is done with this round of innovations. They could pick that back up. I mean, at some point they got to start planning, right, for what they're going to be announcing next year.
I don't think that's going to make a keynote though. It's like, whoa, look what we did. We put the system settings here.
They'll be like,
we've
noticed a lot of people are getting lost in the settings and not being able to experience the bicycle of the mind. So we've really redone the work on the settings to make it a more experiential and work out better with you.
But in all seriousness, Joe, like I think on the operating system, but we were just talking about the training of, again, not naming any cloud vendor, but most of them are kind of the same. Like you're setting things up in the cloud. You have to learn how to do it. And so most of the training is like you go to a screen and then they give you instructions on, be like, here's how you need to configure this thing to do this thing, whether it's like DNS or whatever. And I'm like, man, if there's a place for AI, right?
Oh, because that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Because what it is, it's like all of them have like just slightly different language. And also too, there's like a few checkboxes that are usually very, very important, right? Like you got to do this. And it's really what you would love to say at the top of that screen is like DNS is a great example. I think Cote, you've talked about that. Is like what you want to say is sort of like, I want this domain to redirect everything to here. That's it, right? You just want to say, and then of course, like out pops like all the CNAME and the at character, all of that language, because you're never like unless you do it every single day. And then I think for all the cloud vendors, it's the same kind of thing. It's like I want a virtual machine that looks like this, that's available to just me and is protected, right? Something like that. And it's just like, and it just like sets it off and maybe even like highlights all the things it did for you and like points out why it's doing it, and even points out the stuff it didn't do because it tells you why. Because it's like, that's what you really want. And when you're doing the training, all you're doing is usually like reading through it and then understanding the explanation. I would love, and the same thing with operating systems, it would be great just to be like, yeah, like, whatever, like, turn on like the Mac's the best. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be using this Mac. All these apps should have access to the file system. Please just like make that happen. Like, don't make me answer yes every time. Yes, Zoom, Chime, Teams, like everyone, they all need access to the desktop. Well, right. And
then the new Sequoia release, I guess, those settings time out after a month. So when you approve it, like in a month, it's going to be like, do you still want, Chime to have full screen control?
It's super annoying, right? So no one wants that, right? Like we just want to be like, I do this all the time. Make this work, right?
I don't know. Like now that I'm like neck deep in security stuff and seeing this stuff every day, I'm like, how is any of this ever secure? Is kind of my default response. When you turn on when you turn on like a large company with my employer's product, and you see just 80,000-90,000 things show up, you're like, what the holy hell is going on here, right? I mean, we're trying to prioritize things, but it's also like, I bet the people who set all these things up thought they were doing a good job. That's my problem. I mean, my problem is like, it's so hard to get things done in the cloud and then done correctly, securely in the cloud are two different, kind of things. And it's like a task of Sisyphus here that, it's never done. The threat landscape changes all the time. And then, Joe Bob opened the wrong email, and now, you've got PII everywhere and, free credit reporting for the rest of us forever. I mean, it's treacherous.
It sounds like you've been practicing your sales pitch, Matt Ray. Because I think
my sales pitch is practically like flee and terror.
I think maybe I'm gonna. You can take this back to the brand people at your work. I think I'm gonna give this to them for free. Security, it never ends. I think that's never over.
That's what we say come renewal time.
I mean, this brings together a lot of my theories. I'm gonna, one of them is the we've got too many types of screwdrivers theory, right? It's just sort of like capitalism needs to like take a vacation. I think we've done okay. Just need a few screwdrivers. And the other one is like, what are we really doing around here? And I think maybe what we should do is just stop using computers. That might solve things, or at least let's just stop the evolution of computers. I think we're fine. And then we don't have to figure out what Apple AI is. We don't have to deal with that. Just that if you haven't released it already, you're not allowed to release anything. We're just going to stick with what we have and patches. That's what we get. You can patch things. Nothing new. Now that I've got really fast internet, like if the rest of computing advances, then eventually I'm going to be stuck with slow internet again because things will improve. But so I need it to freeze. Everything's good. I want like not on my desktop. That's going to be my new motto.
So, but to that end, Cote, I think, you've been talking a lot about platforms in the newsletter, right? And a few episodes ago, I think you kind of threw it out. Maybe it's a solid suggestion, but a little bit of kidding around. It's like, maybe we should rename DevOps days to platform days. So a couple of things. One, I actually took a poll for in the Software Defined Talk Slack. And so this is what it revealed. It said 8 people said keep DevOps days. 2 people said change it to platform days. And 9, and this believe me, this is always the bulk of Software Defined Talk listeners. 9 says it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. But
thanks for showing up and voting, everybody.
It is though. I appreciate it because I do feel like it is like, it's kind of like it, don't get worried about the things that don't matter. But I was thinking, and this is what I wanted to get your take on it, was more like inside of this, though, I think is sort of like a broader question around, at least the way I'm going to frame it, and feel free to challenge this, is that like DevOps days in a lot of ways has become sort of like talking about the culture and the processes and how teams interact and kind of people over process kind of thing. And that I get that. I understand where that comes from. We can all go back and, see where the Agile Manifesto and all that kind of, the origins of all of that. But I think, inside of like some of your writing is sort of like, well, at the end of the day, kind of the outcome we all just kind of want is a platform, like a platform that really, if you will, that some group is maintaining, that's making it much easier for a much larger group to, if you will, release new business critical functionality on some regular basis, right? And to a large extent, and this is the part where I don't know, I'm not sure how much I agree with this, but I'm gonna throw it out there. It's sort of like talking about like all of the culture and all of these other things, like you can start to lose sight of the original goal, right? The original goal is like, we just need to get stuff out faster, right? And one way we can do that is just like, let's just maintain a platform that we all, want to use. And we've got, that's sort of like that where platform days I think would come from. Like, here's how we build it. Here's how we maintain it. Here's how we make it better. Here's how we service a lot of other customers. And because it is a way to talk to like more, if you will, about the outcomes, to use the quote business terminology, rather than like the how. So I don't know. I mean, of course, people can come back and be like, no, that was all of DevOps was a response to that. It's like, we needed these 2 teams to be working together, and that's how we get that to happen. But if it does feel like maybe that's like lost its way a little bit, like there's too much, like there was someone else that wrote a post about like Agile. I remember, he had some funny name, like salads and scrambled eggs. And I think just to boil that down was just sort of like, it's just gone too far. Now we have all these people talking about Agile and Agile training and like scrums. And it's like, we've lost the idea was to like ship stuff faster, not to be always talking about this. And I just wondered if, I don't know, Cote, is that where you're coming from? Is that like a fair summarization of like, is the idea of shipping from platform days to from DevOps days, is it hitting on any of those themes?
Yeah, well, more or less. I think, I'm one who complains about like there's too much culture stuff a lot, and I was just thinking as you were going over that it would be good to go see what's actually on the agendas and balance between the two. But I think there's a few things. One, like when I've talked with some of the DevOps days organizers, they've noticed a severe dip in sponsorship. And, so there's sort of like, is DevOps still a thing people want to sponsor? Now, you talk with other conference organizers and they're like, yes, that's happening to everyone. So, that is an issue. However, since the Federal Reserve, reduced the interest rate, I'm pretty sure we're going to go back to the, ZERP phenomena at some point. I think, is that how this happens? I don't know about macroeconomic winds, be they tails or heads. Not really my specialty, but I think there is. I went and reread. There's a pretty good IDC piece that's basically like, what's the deal with DevOps and platform engineering? It's written in analyst talk, so it's not written that clearly.
It's not for humans.
But I think I agree with the following kind of the thing that they throw out, which is I'm going to summarize it, but it's basically DevOps never whatever. I'm not going to hem and haw about things, but like DevOps as it is practiced. Let's put it that way. That's what I mean when I say DevOps. Is it still has too much responsibility on the application developers, or it still puts too much on them. You know, your old full stack thing. So they still spend a lot of time doing that. And instead, what you get from the platform thinking is, you know, what we should do is just make everyone use a centralized platform. Now, of course, you invoke the equivalent of, I mean, the Phoenix project of platform engineering is team topologies. And so like immediately you invoke the team topologies. What's the opposite of a taboo? Like an unquestionable part of orthodoxy that you can't question. Anyways, whatever that word is.
Church.
Yeah. Like there's a word for that. And so one of the team topology things is like people have to choose to use the platform, right? You can't force people to use the platform. Otherwise, you're not team topologying. And I don't know. I mean, that's interesting as a whatever this kind of thing is. That's interesting as a limitation, a constraint that you put on yourself to encourage you to have good behavior, which is to say, to make a platform that people want to use. But really, I think what a lot of the kind of like, if platform engineering is sort of a movement, as people say, has a positive effect, I think it will probably be due to consolidating down to just as few platforms as possible and just forcing people to use it. Because really, until you get that, you don't get a lot of benefits of platforms. And those benefits are, maybe this is, again, as DevOps is practice, at least this is kind of like a little bit of what the IDC thing is going over. And I don't know, it kind of feels right, is that DevOps ends up being like the concepts, sure, but then let's just use a bunch of tools to like deal with the various like infrastructure that we have.
Yeah.
So we don't really end up building a platform as a service. And then, you know, not to get me all started, but then of course, I mean, this is a core part of any presentation I give, even if it's to like, you know, my daughter's kindergarten class about how to use crayons, is like, we're doing pretty well. And then this Kubernetes came and like weed whacked out all the platform work we had been doing. And we're just waiting. Maybe it even what was the thing where you got that fire that you can make a creme brulee out of your yard with? Like you like burn out the weeds or whatever. But you know, now we're growing that stuff back. But I think that's the big like shift that I think is what is the difference between these two things. So then that goes back to the renaming of stuff. Is what's frustrating about that, especially when you read the IDC thing, is there is like there's not collectively, and I say we loosely because whatever, I just make slides, but collectively we just decided to not call that DevOps and come up with a new name for things, which seems really not real, right? Like it seems like we just, you know, of course there was famously, was it IDC said it was in 2022, but I feel like it was in 2023. But you know, the Humanitech people, who I think really launched all of this, if I remember. I haven't done the legwork.
Definitely were the head cheerleaders. Yeah.
Right. So they did the whole DevOps is dead thing. And then, you know, so that kind of helped push this platform stuff. So I think, and I don't know, this kind of comes from the 9 doesn't matter. Ironically, I think one of those, the 2 votes to change it to platform days was me. So that doesn't really count. But, you know, it almost seems like putting down the name DevOps, but I almost think like the idea and what the DevOps days does is more important than the name. And so if you were to add platform to it, one, there isn't yet, like Humanitech again and their other sponsors, they run the I forget what they call it, the platform con or something, and they're just now starting to have it in person. There was one in London and somewhere in the States, I think. And the CNCF is like they have like a little, whatever they call those sidecar conferences to KubeCon.
Community days.
Yeah. So they have one for that. So they're kind of starting that up. But like, so maybe over the next 24 months, like, even if, as people will say, the relationship between DevOps and platform engineering is something or another, like at some point, if the DevOps crew doesn't do something, there's going to be no more oxygen left in the room for them.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, they should do something. And like, I think it's kind of, and just to wrap up my thing here, I think there is a justifiable case to be made that like all this platform engineering stuff is just DevOps stuff. And so it's cool if they take it over. So it's a weird suggestion to say they should rename themselves, but I almost think it's like, whatever. Just like, it's either these guys are either going to do it or you can do it. And like, which one do you want to be? So that's my case.
Well, I mean, I think I probably voted against it. I don't remember. I either voted like whatever or against it, but that's because I've always felt like platform engineering has been a retreat from a lot of the ideas behind DevOps of getting everyone involved. Right. I mean, one of the points of DevOps was like a shared responsibility model where, hey, developers are going to be responsible for the things they put in production. I mean, that's a very like, Google, kind of, or I guess an Amazon approach to DevOps is like, you build it, you run it. And platform engineering feels like a license to say, you throw it over to the wall to this cultivated platform we've built for you, and we'll run it. And that's back to the silos we had before. And so the problem, though, of course, is DevOps had been, largely co-opted again as like, fancy sysadmins. And so now, fancy sysadmins became DevOps, became SREs, and now they're going to become platform engineering. And we're still going to have the silos of developers just wanting to throw things over a wall. And, now, we've got a platform for you to run it. You still don't have to pay attention, and operating this thing is somebody else's problem. That's been my whole problem with the whole thing the whole time. And the culture stuff doesn't draw vendors. It doesn't draw sponsors. So what are you going to do?
So to that end, I know, I want to throw out like 2 examples, I guess, of like, and feel free to like throw in some others that you think are better. But like, I always think to myself, if you just kind of ask people hallway track kind of stuff, it's like, who has the strongest like platform that people talk about, right? It's like Google always comes out. People are like, I went and coded at Google and it was like magic. It was nirvana. Like to your point, like it's not so much that I didn't have to run it. It's just like they had all this magic stuff. And as long as I did this, this, and this, I could scale it to like 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Such that like so many people leave Google. That's the thing they always miss. They're like, well, it was kind of bureaucratic, but we had like the greatest tools of all time. And they even try to recreate them. The other company I'll throw out that I feel like that has something similar is like Netflix. It feels like Netflix has like a really good platform. They're always building stuff. They're, open sourcing it, but there's like a lot of internal stuff. And it's sort of like, will you use this stuff? It really lets you scale and throw it out. But I don't feel like either one of those companies, I think like the tooling, I guess your point, I guess, is like they spent so much time on the platform and the tooling and making it so strong that people really love to use it and they talk about how much they love it. And I feel like those companies don't spend a lot of time talking about DevOps. It's sort of like just embedded inside the tools. Go ahead, Matt.
I feel like Netflix does though. A lot of the tools they spin out are like developers were seeing this issue, or the field was seeing this issue, and we went back to like first principles to solve how we do blah blah blah. And so there is usually, it feels like developers are brought in to solve platform issues because everything at Netflix is platform, right? It's just the application is a SaaS. Google definitely has the feeling of we have this magical engine and everything is tooled up right where if anything breaks, we've got the keys to the kingdom ready for you to go. I mean, I agree. Like Google has, and that comes out of like their SRE model of like, we have a platform that has developer operators working on it all the time. And so that's kind of the difference there is they have like, SREs and platform people who are working with development teams actively. That's the key though, is the interaction. I think so many shops are just like, look, can't you just make this thing stable so we can get back to coding? And then you're just having developers who are like looking at their scrums, looking at their 2-week sprints, and all they want to do is burn down these things and throw something over the wall. And that is what I think most CTOs, when they hear platform engineering, are like, can't you just build me the SaaS that I want? Or the path that I
you're
want?
hitting on the thing. It's like you said, what you said in there, I guess is really important, is like those companies, they have developers working on the platform, and SREs, developers and SREs working on the platform all the time, and they foster strong communications with, in this case, their end users, which are application developers. Whereas maybe it just becomes a resource thing in the end. It's like most other places, there's just not enough money, or they're not a will to be like, oh, we have people doing that. It's more like, Matt, like implement a new feature, and by the way, when you're in the logging framework, could you like clean that up and make that a little bit better too? It's like, it feels like much more. But then somebody say, well, that's DevOps, like your shared responsibility. You're working on this little infrastructure, you're doing a little application coding, you got some support you got to do, and it's just sort of like none of it really, like, it doesn't, none of it ever like works well. You know what I mean? It's like, whereas Google, it seems like, oh, someone's like, there's a whole logging team. I don't know if this is actually true, but like, there's someone's thought a lot about, like,
I'm sure it's true.
Like, somebody has like figured it all out. They're like, no, like, we got all the logging use cases.
They're like, we built
this, right? And in fact, it's not, they didn't have to tell you. You just go to inside. You're like, oh, I'm just going to use this thing. It has everything I've ever thought I wanted. So I don't know, Cote, maybe that your pitch should just be go work at Google, because they have the best platform.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of like biased of 10 years of working at a PaaS company, with a strange interlude into Kubernetes land. But like it like with all of the types of large organizations I talk with, like, I feel like they already got enough problems without like you run it, you build it being like a theory of things, right? Or you build it, you run it. Hopefully you do it in the correct order. Although I don't know, if you look at the kind of agile proponents, sometimes it's good to like, figure out how to build it by running it, which probably works sometimes. But the point being that like, I like, kind of the direction you're going is I think there's a, I don't know the best phrase, but a business case to be made, which is like, all right, it's going to cost us this much money to have the team who works on the log files, right? Or, the team that's supporting like all these different things, or we could just like have one platform and like not really worry about a bunch of people figuring out kind of like, I don't know, this is almost like a generation 2 DevOps idea that I'm going to give developers just access to IaaS, to infrastructure, and maybe I'll have some governance about how things are doing. And of course, the various vendors I work with are going to want me to use only their tool. But then we just acquired the 3rd largest bank in our region. and they had acquired
onto this. Yeah.
They had merged with an insurance company and a commodities trading firm. So now we got all of this, right?
Right.
And so you've already got the situation where you have lots of teams using different tools. And it seems like what's really attractive there is to just keep consolidating down to as few things as possible, right? Which to me, I don't know. I'd have to think about if this is true. Definitely with platform engineering, they're always a little hesitant about this, but the idea is like your ideal state is one platform, no matter what the size of your company, like Google, right? Or at least what we hear about Google. Who knows how things actually work? And I don't feel like that was a thing or is a thing in the DevOps world. Like, well, you tell me, Matt Ray, is there a version, at least in like, kind of early DevOps, where if, let's say, let's say if at Bank of America, they only use Chef, like, would that have been good? I mean, good for Chef, obviously, but would that have been like the guy in the Phoenix project? Would he have been like, God damn, that's great. Call up Goldrat. We've got a success here, right? That like is having one tool that everyone uses the dream of DevOps, or is that a platform engineering dream?
I think it is part of. I know I was on the DevOps is not the tooling, but having a common language does help, right? And
Right.
so, which is down the path to platform engineering, right? Is like, oh well, let's standardize on Chef, and oh, you know what? Next we'll standardize on Kubernetes, and next we'll standardize on everything goes through this developer workflow. Yeah, I think standardization is part of it, which is the problem, right? It's like platform engineering seems like the end goal, but I still feel like they just want to shed. They want everyone to get to shed any sort of shared responsibility on the path, and so they're like, look, don't you worry your pretty little head. We'll have this platform ready for you if you just use Chef, if you just use whatever. We'll deal with everything, and you don't have to care. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's it feels like an overreaction or an oversimplification.
So this brings up another thing. I mean, it's tangentially related, but like I was talking with someone earlier this week, and they were bringing up the point that a lot of platform stuff just assumes that infrastructure exists, right? Like I don't think if you go to the platform con, there's a lot of talk about like configuring DNS. Whereas if you go to a DevOps days, they'll talk about DNS a lot and various other things.
DNS.
Right. And so, but this is the other part. Like at a DevOps days, there is like culture talk, talking about process and things like that. But there will also be stories about just weird technical stuff, like your old friend Michael Ducey. He had a great story at DevOps days Antwerp. It was amazing about just tracking down some security stuff, and there was some customer of Red Hat's, I guess, was like, we the security team found like 50,000 security problems. You got to solve that. And then of course, he was like, it's like I made a pivot table, and then it turns out like 2 of them were an actual problem. Like once you do the analysis, so like. There are stories like that about infrastructure stuff. And I don't know if my sense with the platform engineering community is they're kind of like, I need an IaaS that I don't ever have to think about. And, which is to say public cloud, right? Like, and they really just want to focus on that platform, which is great. Just focus on the paths. But I think that's something that like, DevOps is a little more like, let's talk about DNS, right? And kind of it's been at that layer, which I don't know what to do with that, but it is an interesting thing to consider as we kind of like observe platform engineering is like, eventually they're going to be like, I ran out of LPARs or something like, what do I do now? Which is going to be an issue for them that I think the DevOps community is more, what's the word? They're more prepared to deal with whatever LPARs are, right? Like that's kind of like their thing.
Well,
of course,
they don't. They don't feel absolved of any responsibility. I think with a platform engineering team, it's like, look, run my code, and then when the platform people come back and are like, your thing is kind of using too much storage, too many LPARs. Can you do this? And they're like, you told me that you would handle the platform. What is the problem? Right? I mean, because they don't have to care about how their stuff runs. And so then, later on, you're going to be like, oh, well, could you do something about cost management, or could you do something about security? And like, whoa, what is this, a DevOps platform? I thought you had the platform under control, right? I thought this was your problem. This was your silo. I shouldn't have to care about security, cost, performance, logging, monitoring. That's what you're supposed to do. And so it just reinforces the silos of actually we needed you to pay attention to this stuff, or hey, can you go back to your code and do this, or when your stuff blows up, nobody can debug it. There needs to be this conversation going back and forth between maintainers of the platform and the developers, or else you end up with like, Roblox, and you have no idea what's happening under the covers. Right?
So I wonder if another way to have this conversation, and it was sparked, my thought was sparked this week by Sonos, right? Sonos has been going through this, very bad release of the app. And it's gotten to the point that Bloomberg wrote the following sentence. It said, quote, ignoring tech debt, disregarding employee warnings, and cutting costs combined to create a crisis that the high-end audio company is still struggling to recover from. And I always thought, like, wow, when Bloomberg writes tech debt, like, it's gotten bad. And so I was just wondering, though, if that's not the kind of the ongoing discussion is really between all the groups, between the platform, the app developers, and everyone else working on this, is like, everyone kind of generally knows, like, how much tech debt are we accumulating, right? Like, how fragile are things getting, right? And even if you don't know how to fix it all, there's generally, you could just walk around a room and get a sense of like, how bad are we off, right? And I just wonder if that's sort of like a way to start talking about it more, is like, hey, we know the debt is getting pretty high, and we know the consequences. Like, you can cite Sonos as an example. If it gets too far out of control and we have a major outage that affects, like, the CrowdStrike affected all the airlines, or in this case affected every Sonos customers, that we're going to really be in a difficult situation. So maybe that's a way to talk about it, is like, it's not so much who's doing it, is just like, if we don't spend more time, to your point, Matt, like, if the application developers aren't heeding the advice, I need you to go back and do these things, the tech debt only increases, or vice versa. If the platform isn't taking the time to go do some of the other things that everyone's dependent on. And that's, I don't know, just, it's almost like, you'd almost like want a temperature gauge, like walking in every morning, like, where are we? Like,
what's the interest rate on your tech debt mortgage?
You kind of want, you do. You're
like, it's an arm, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is this adjustable rate mortgage that's about to blow up on us? Or like, do we have this under control?
I think a positive thing out of this is I'd have to, I'll never get around to it, but I'd have to think about it. I think there has been, in the past few years, a mounting understanding that software gets old and it starts to crumble. That's a metaphor for it. But like, like with the maybe with the Sonos thing here and other stuff, where you just have more awareness that, like, oh, we've been neglecting our software. Like, didn't Southwest have some big problem?
Yeah.
But then, of course, but then, of course, because they were still, whatever the rumor was, running an old version of Windows that was kind of zeroed that out. It kind of saved them from something. But there is sort of like, this is a constant problem in IT, is the non-IT people don't seem to believe you when you say, like, we really need to fix the potholes in our portfolio. Like, we got to, like, fix stuff, and it just doesn't seem to happen. So maybe some more stuff will start crumbling apart, and then people will say, like, oh, right, we should make sure that things are running well, that the factory. See, I've only got metaphors. That's the problem. that things are running well. And it seems like, security has kind of been a good excuse, but I mean, maybe we'll learn, from Matt about this stuff as things go on. But I feel like a security problem rarely leads to, oh, we better redo how we do stuff, right? Like more, you just kind of fix little things here and there. I mean, we call it a patch, not a rebuild. And so I don't know. We need more motivations of just like, let's put a new technology in. Let's actually like migrate stuff. Like there was a story of I think it was the U.S. air traffic controller stuff, like the usual kind of government thing where there's some ponderous PDF, and basically the result is like, ooh, we really should modernize this stuff, and we're not going to. Like, it's just like it's been a hard slog to get through. Well, I wanted to mention just briefly, since we cover the emerging world of open source, or I should say emerging is the wrong word. The maturing of open source. Maybe it's late stage open source. I don't really know, but it appears that I didn't realize that I was witnessing late stage open source history moment. But I did watch the Matt Mullenweg video where he basically doesn't like Silver Lake, just to summarize, and among other things. And I think maybe there's some trademark problems. There's the old freeloading problem, which has been covered a lot in our open source coverage. But mysteriously, he has this very specific citation of they're not saving old versions of your files. in order. It sound like to save LPARs. I don't know, but it does seem like an odd fight has been emerging, and then there were some court filings where there were screenshots of him asking WP Engine to maybe like pay for some trademark stuff. And then just before we started recording, he published charitable contributions that he's made over the years. So we don't really know what's going on here, but I feel like over the next few episodes, there might be some drama.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned for next week. We'll
yeah.
So, I think listeners should catch up on what's going on there. And so we can check in on it. I mean, I don't know. It seems it's a fresh new take on the AWS is stealing my open source stuff, with AWS not even involved, but that whole freeloader pattern that the open source people don't like. So we'll see how that pans out there. Now is another thing. Now, Brandon, do you know when is this Apple Intelligence going to be available? I know you're tracking this closely, so this is something else I want to have.
18.1 sometime in October, but I've read that it will be very, very small amount of Apple Intelligence. I think it will only be like 2 features, which is like summarized notifications and maybe so it feels like Apple is I guess they've gone agile. It feels like we're going to get a lot of releases over the next year, like 18.1, 2, 3, 4, 5 where they'll actually start rolling out all of these features. So I don't know. I don't have an iPhone 15. I'm on the 14 still, so I've postponed upgrading until I see some reason. It's almost like, until there's something I can really see that's great, I want to I'll just rock the iPhone 14 Pro for a while.
Yeah. Have they put like a minimum version? I mean, I'm good on the laptop side, but my phone still has coverage, but I've got a 12 mini. So
you're toast. You need at a minimum a 15 Pro or higher. So to use any of the Apple Intelligence features.
Oh well.
So
I'll go back to yelling at Siri. Yeah.
But I think like most people, like what you just said, I think most people can maybe try it on their M1 or higher Max, get a sense of like what it does, and then if you if you're dying to have it, that'd be motivation to upgrade your phone.
Yeah. Well, I use the Gemini stuff now, which means they kind of trickle it into the all your various Google things. It's kind of nice. I actually here's your just very quickly the quick AI use of the episode. I think we skipped last time. I received a letter from the Dutch government. Actually, Kim received it and she forwarded it to me. I loaded it up in Gmail in the PDF viewer, and it summarized it in English for me. And it was perfect.
There you go.
It was basically like, the letter said this, it said this, and that. And I'd actually read it already, and then I just loaded it in there the next day, and the summary was great. It was as Brandon knows, my favorite use case. Just summarize these novels that my kids' school send me in email. Like, tell me what I got to do.
What's actionable here?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, and speaking of that, we won't talk about it very long because I know we need to move on. But I just think we should, as longtime proprietors of the Software Defined Talk M&A advisors, our default position is just to say no. So Qualcomm has approached Intel about taking them over. So I think we should just summarize. We give them a full summary. It's like, it's really fun to talk about, and you probably shouldn't do it. So I think that would be the summary of our acquisition advice. But we'll watch it play out in the press, just like the WordPress drama.
I like you've developed one of the competitive advantages, the differentiations of the Software Defined Talk M&A consultancy is we are here so that you can talk about how awesome it would be.
It would be awesome, right? It would be cool to talk about.
We're going to do a 3-day session where you just go over why it would be great, and at the end, you'll have expended all that energy, and then you can.
And we'll probably, and then we'll promptly, provide needles for your balloons,
right? And then exactly, and then we can move quickly to the no. I think is what we'll say. Like, here's the template of the slide deck. It's going to have 80 slides. You always have the last slide. The last slide says no. And put whatever you want in slides.
Here's the template. Can you please fill in the first 70 slides, but make sure you leave the last one.
Right. Like, you can put whatever you want in slides 1 to 79, leave slide 80. Yeah, that'll be $5 million. Thank you. Speaking of $5 million, do we have any bureaucracy this episode?
Our only bureaucracy is just Jeffrey from the Slack. He says, quote, his wife has been using Oslo's for a bit. She says they're 10 out of 10. They work exactly like her Bose ones she used to have, and they last up to 9 hours. So these are the sleep pods, I'll call them, AirPod things. So if you're looking for them, I think I recommended them. Obviously, Jeffrey's wife likes them. So if you're very niche, but it has been kind of a good thing. And then, of course, as always, if you would like a sticker, just send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world.
Well, there's several conferences. There's Cloud Foundry Day coming up in a couple of weeks. You should check that out. It's going to be in Germany. There's VMware Explore Barcelona, November 4th and 7th. And SRE Day Amsterdam, I'll be speaking there November 21st. And then there's DevOps Days LA and Scale 22X, March 6th to 9th in 2025. We'll see if we can arrange something there. There's several discount codes you can use for those. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/486. And if I said that too fast for you, just release the turbo button and you'll be able to, read it more slowly when you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/486. Now with that, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend?
So my recommendation is, a TV show called Ghosts, and on the BBC. I think there's an American version. I'm going to go on a limb and just say it's not as good. It's got a weird kind of theme about a woman who inherits a big old fancy mansion and gets bumped on the head or something and can see ghosts. And essentially, the house that she inherited is haunted by a humorous group of ghosts from different time eras. So you've got a caveman, you've got World War II general. So it's a comedy, but it's also kind of weird. And it's just like one of those quirky BBC comedies. So I enjoy it. Like I said, the American one, I can't see it being good, but I think it's the Britishness of it. So that's my recommendation. It's not like a laugh out loud. It's just kind of quirky and weird and funny. But I
laugh inside quietly.
Well, no. I laugh out loud at least once an episode, usually because of the caveman. So
yes. How about yourself, Brandon? What do you have to recommend, Brandon?
Well, I come with like the very cutting edge apps that no one's ever heard of. It turns out Apple has this app called Magnifier that literally it's just what you think it was. It basically lets you use like kind of what is it called, the macro lens, and of course you can just take a picture if you need to read something or you want to kind of blow it up. But this is a nice little simple app that just lets you magnify things using the nice camera. So like I don't have the greatest eyesight, but I think even those with perfect eyesight and you're just looking at like something that's really, really tiny, it's nice to have like a nice simple app that just magnifies things. It makes it real easy to read them, and you can obviously take photos. So,
real-time feedback.
Real-time feedback. So, it works really well because it has very good focus when you zoom in. That's the problem with the camera,
right? Because you don't, because it kind of knows. Because I guess that's I want to say magic. I mean this like it's pretty simple. You're basically telling it, no, like use the macro, use the best camera. Whereas like when you take a picture, you have to like keep switching and make it bigger and bigger. Where the magnifier app just like knows what you're doing. So I don't know. So if you find yourself, it's kind of like it's sort of, if you will, a companion to the flashlight, right? The flashlight app or the flashlight thing. Oh, it's like, oh, magnifier. I stumbled onto this one and I quite like it. So it's free. It's in the App Store. Check it out.
That's good. Well, my recommendation is a book. As always, I haven't finished reading or listening to in Audible. It's great as an Audible listen called The Modern Myths. And it's by this guy, Philip Ball, who's he used to, anyways, he's kind of like a science writer, but it's all about like this notion that like, what are the myths that we have from the last 100 years or a couple 100 years? And it ends up being things like, Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I've been promised that Batman is in there somewhere. And, the notion is that like we had, first he discusses what makes a myth. And one of the things that he says a myth is that it's a really simple structure that gets redone in various stories over and over again. And and I think he makes the case pretty well as he walks through these various things. I just started the chapter on Dracula, and if you think about it, like that's kind of a myth that we have, vampires. And so it's a good listen, and it has just enough like freshman year English major analysis that you would get an A+ on to be kind of entertaining. And it often walks up to lines of absurdity and then is like, that's kind of dumb as far as like too deep of an analysis, and just comes back down.
And then walk it back.
Yeah, so it's good. The Modern Myths. It's a good little book. Well, speaking of things that are good little, this has been Software Defined Talk. If you're interested in the show notes, lots of things we didn't mention, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/486. You should subscribe to the podcast, leave us some feedback, all that kind of stuff. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well done as always. I don't know, Matt. I guess I felt like your mic changed or something. Got like a ton of background noise suddenly. I don't know if that was just like a much noisier group than normal, or like something.
Like somebody started like unloading the dishwasher or something.
Like, I felt like I was there. So all right,
maybe when it was doing whatever audio processing, it also boosted the gain to hear Matt's voice or something.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something like, because the gain did seem to jump around there. I don't know. Like, are you on like a what mic? What kind of mic you on? You just on?
It's the
USB. Are you on USB?
Samsung. Yeah, it's a USB mic.
Oh, I wonder. Do you have like adjust? We'll have to see. Do you have the adjust gain? Does it dynamically adjust the gain? It's in the software. All right, something else to look at, because I think you're right.
Who knows?
Okay. I think that was it. All right. Well, thanks for everyone.
We went this whole episode, and I only made a small joke about 486, just in passing. Didn't even mention an exclusive.
We got any more material? You want to get it out now? You want to?
No, it's just 486 processor.
Anything else you want to like throw out?
Still good.
Yeah. We reached 486 just in time for Intel to melt down. So last of the V8s.
Nice. Well, thanks for everyone who streamed with us today. Good to see Brett on. JG tells us that he's been on the beta for months, and he has not used any artificial intelligence features or Apple Intelligence features from the new release. So I guess we're not missing anything. I know, Kote, you on an iPhone 15 Pro?
Yeah.
Pro?
Yep.
You're in the Pro? All right, so you'll be...
I got the Pro Max.
All right, great. So you're going to be our designated beta tester, since neither Matt or I have the actual latest and greatest.
Well, I'm definitely not going to install a beta, but
I've got an... Oh, wait, no.
Did you have
who knows if it's going to be available?
No.
Did you, Kote, did you upgrade to the iOS 18?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you'll be there like next month. It'll have something. So and a year from now, that'll be on Sequoia. What's the latest thing?
Sequoia.
Sequoia seemed fine. I didn't have any problems with that. And
like I said, our IT said there's security issues with it, and they won't let people upgrade yet. So
makes sense. All right. All right. Well, thanks for everyone hanging out with us today. We'll stream hopefully about this time next week. Till then, take care.